More and more games are coming out that are 50 plus hours long, and don't even get me started with live service games that are meant to eat up as much of your time as they can. But there's only so many hours in a day, and as much as we'd like to game all day, there are other things that gotta get done. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 single-player games worth spending 10 hours on. Let's start off with number 10, the Dead Space remake, which comes in about 12 hours. Survival horror is pretty ideal for shorter lengths. Horror, it gets stale if you stretch it out too long. You eventually understand what you can survive and how, and the Dead Space remake understands. It gets in and gets out at a brisk 12-ish hours. Now, there are people who are going to beat it faster than 10 hours, people who are going to take longer than 12 hours. We're basing these times off how long to beat, and it's generally pretty accurate if you are just trying to beat the game without knowing anything about it. But Dead Space Remake is a real roller coaster 10 to 12 hours. You play as Isaac Clarke, an engineer sent with a team to investigate the USG Ishimura, a mining ship, a planet cracker, a thing that literally takes apart planets for resources, and the Ishimura is seemingly abandoned.
It's not just comms with the guidance system. Half the Ishimura's in the red. Engines, hull, the tramps.
Could do that kind of damage to a planet cracker.
Of course, things go completely crazy instantly when you're jumped by these grotesque monsters called necromorphs, and everything pops off from there. The original is really good, of course, but the remake actually is better. It's a remake that, aside from the fact that it really doesn't change anything fundamental about the game, somehow makes it into an experience that's heightened well above the original game. A lot of the changes are relatively small, but they're very noticeable, and things like how they changed the USG Ishimura's layout to be actually interconnected as opposed to a series of levels is really cool. It doesn't take too long to finish, but it's so tightly crafted, it doesn't matter. It's a perfect length. And number 9 is Super Mario Wonder, a 9-hour game. Feels like whiplash to go from Dead Space to this. Probably the only thing these games have in common is that they're around 10 hours. Mario Wonder maybe a little bit shorter, but the new Super Mario Bros. Series, it was always meant to be throwbacks, and even with that in mind, they got a little stale. It felt like they were kind of coasting, and Super Mario Wonder was an announcement that was like, yeah, we get it. We're not going to keep doing that. It really felt like a statement. They heard people's complaints about this series and really went above and beyond in addressing them. What makes Super Mario Wonder so great is how it just constantly surprises you, from the first level that reveals bizarre stuff like moving pipes and singing piranha plants, all the way up to the end. The game is throwing curveballs at you to subvert your expectations for what's possible in a Mario game. You'd think they'd run out of ideas, but no, there's just new crazy stuff all the time. Most levels play out by introducing some new gimmick or enemy, and then using that in a crazy way later on in the level when you pick up a Wonder Flower, which is a power-up hidden somewhere in the level that activates the Wonder effect and makes everything go crazy. Would have been a great Mario game even without all this, but the addition of the Wonder Flower makes it an all-time great that goes well above, again, what you would expect. It's about 10 hours, maybe a little less, and that's actually pretty long for a Mario game, but it's packed with so much creativity that it just never gets stale. And number 8 is Ghostwire Tokyo, clocking in at about 11 hours, a bizarre open-world horror hybrid that's not actually that scary, but makes up for it by being very strange. It's set in Shibuya after it's been taken over by ghosts, of course, which it's up to you and your magic-talking hand to deal with this problem. The only way you know how. Magic! It's essentially an FPS, but instead of guns, you got different magic attacks. And in terms of gameplay, it's more of an open world game. You can get lost just wandering around getting collectibles, but honestly, that's where the game's at its best. It's one of those games where you could spend 30 hours in if you wanted to, but I think that it's better to beeline for the plot and stick to how long to beat's estimate of about 11. I think the game is much better for it. Not that there isn't a merit to exploration in this frankly beautiful world that they've created, but the combat can get kind of repetitive. The open world tasks are, they're open world tasks. You've seen them before. You know what they are. But like I said, the world design, it's top of class. And all of the main missions where you see all of the locations they've lovingly created, or recreated rather, obviously with some artistic license. But everything is just crazy in terms of detail. And every new ghost you encounter is a fun puzzle, just trying to figure out what they're supposed to do, how to deal with them. It's rare to find games with enemies where you legitimately just don't know what to expect of them. And that's pretty much what this game is built on. It's not perfect, but it is very interesting. And spending about 10 hours in it is just perfect. And number 7 is Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Insomniac's latest entry in the long-running Ratchet and Clank series is excellent. There's a consistency to these games that's rarely seen in the games industry. If you've played these since PS2, you know exactly what you're going to get in terms of mechanics, but you always know it's going to be good, and above all else, designed impeccably. You run through mostly linear levels, blasting enemies with an assortment of cartoonish sci-fi guns. Sometimes you do some light puzzle solving. You break open a bunch of boxes. Like, that's a big thing. There's an arena in there as well, somewhere. Rift Apart does try to mix up the formula by introducing this impressive interdimensional travel effect and a second playable character, but it's mostly to showcase the PS5's graphical muscle and the new SSD insta-loading, which hasn't been taken advantage by everybody in the same way, I'll say. It's all pretty familiar, honestly, but it's polished to a mere sheen. Ratchet and Clank is just a well-oiled machine that it's so worth the time. And number 6 is Resident Evil Village. About 9.5, 10 hours-ish. It's first-person Resident Evil 4 with, I'll be honest, just a pretty clever utilization of what they had in the 4th Resident Evil game. Like, for years, I've always wondered why Resident Evil never really capitalized on Resident Evil 4. They have this large interconnected area, there's a store, organic progression of power. Dead Space was able to emulate it perfectly, but Resi 5 and 6 did not try, even. And with the 8th game in the series, Capcom finally went back and did things right, and made this absolutely excellent, actually shorter and more condensed Resident Evil 4 type game. It does lean into the first-person viewpoint with locations that are more condensed but just as detailed. The levels, enemy encounters, everything is all top-notch. And the game is constantly switching things up on you. Like, one minute you're sneaking around a castle, next minute you're fighting robot zombies in an underground factory, or avoiding a giant fish monster, or being a peeping Tom on a big old busty 9-foot lady. I'm sorry, what was that last one? I don't know. A lot going on in this game. Briskly paced, but jam-packed with content. It's not as scary as previous Resident Evil games, Resident Evil 7 included, but man is it entertaining. What the hell? And number 5 is Mafia Definitive Edition, a 10.5-hour game. When you think open-world crime games, you think long. Most of these games are sprawling epics that can stretch on for dozens of hours, but Mafia is not that. It's a different beast. Instead of loading the game down with tons of missions, Mafia keeps things very tight, with its framing device of the main character recounting his Mafia exploits to a detective. Basically the greatest hits of an open-world crime game, which, depending on your mood, can be pretty refreshing. It's paced a bit more like a movie than a video game, with each mission progressing the overall story in some way. Honestly, even though it's a huge city, it's hard to describe this one as an open world game even. You're mostly just driving from place to place, progressing the story, and there isn't a lot to do beyond that. It does look fantastic though, and while the story is relatively brief for its contemporaries, let's say, it is, in my opinion, just one of the best out there, and the updated Definitive Edition actually improves the original in a lot of ways outside of just updating the dated graphics. The story makes more sense overall, and while the gunplay isn't anything to write home about, the mission design is fantastic. It's a game that's really more about the story and the fancy visuals, but it works really well, and the game's 10 or so hours feel complete. And number 4 is A Plague Tale: Innocence, coming in at about 11 hours. Also A Plague Tale: Requiem, which comes in at 17 hours, so it's a bit longer, but yeah. Back when the original Plague Tale came off, I kind of just wrote it off. I had seen a lot of indie games try to emulate AAA game experiences like Last of Us and just fall kind of flat on their face. I kind of assumed this would be a $30 tech demo that would kind of end before it began, like a lot of the so-called indie AAA games from that time period. So when I got around to actually playing it, I was pretty damn surprised when the game ended up taking around 10 hours. Wasn't a bite-sized visual showcase. It was a legit game Probably one of the best of the early wave of AA games that are popping up a lot more these days. In terms of gameplay, it's not fair to compare this one to something like Last of Us. It's more of a narrative puzzle game with some light combat elements, but for what it is, the game is really well designed. It has varied environments. It's constantly mixing up the gameplay to keep things interesting. And then there's the rats, the rat hordes. The rat hordes are cool as hell. The sequel, Requiem, it's also very good, but it's about 17 hours, so it's a bit too long for a list like this, but I can't help but recommend the series here if you're looking to feel bad in a good kind of way. And number 3 is Robocop Rogue City, about 8.5 hours, so it's a little bit on the short end for this, but it's recent and it's about 10 hours. I was closer to 10 hours in my playthrough, and it's really the perfect length for something like this. It is such a blunt, stupid, I'm a robot tank man who destroys everything game. But holy hell, it is so entertaining. It is really, really, really your money's worth. One of the things I remember a lot of people worried about with the demo was that it was going to get too repetitive, and it doesn't. It keeps introducing new things for what seems like a perfect amount of time, which for this, again, it's around 10 hours, a little bit less than 10 hours. There's only so many creeps Robocop can blow away before the game starts getting samey, but this game really knows that, because it mixes it up in so many of these clever little ways and gives you all these interesting environmental methods of mayhem to exert on the criminals of Detroit. And also, it's constantly throwing new enemy types at you, which is great. And it gives you all of these little objectives to entertain yourself with, in between blowing people up and generally just causing insane mayhem. It's kind of one of those games that it's a perfect storm. The game's absolutely not perfect, but for whatever reason is way better than the sum of its parts, and it is so fun. And number 2 is Hi-Fi Rush. Microsoft announced this one and then released it, like, in a sentence. Hey, so we're making this game called Hi-Fi Rush, and you can buy it now. And it feels like some bite-sized indie when you look at it, but it isn't. It's about 11 hours. And when it comes to action games, it's just about the perfect length, especially for the pacing that it has. But this thing is unique in that it's not just an action game, it's also a rhythm game. If you time your attacks to the beat, you are a much better combatant. And it is a lot to take in at first. The tutorial is a bit long, and it grinds the intro of this game to a halt. I did it before you buy on it, and I was very complimentary to it. But if there's one criticism I can give it, it's that. That said, once you get past that, once you're off running, this is a hell of a game. The amazing visuals add a ton to the experience too. Some of the cutscenes are like feature film level quality in terms of animation. And, you know, a lot of it you feel like is a kind of a throwback to Jet Set Radio style stuff. Obviously, there's other animation styles mixed in there, but you kind of instantly have that thought for a minute. And in truth, this game, when you describe it, you know, it's a rhythm action game. That doesn't sound like it will work, but Hi-Fi Rush pulls it off. And finally, at number 1, it's Batman Arkham Asylum, which comes in at about 11 hours. The original Rocksteady Batman game is the shortest in the series at only 11 hours, but it's also the most varied, fun, and exciting 11 hours you're going to spend. Back when Arkham Asylum first came out, it felt like a damn miracle. Somehow, the devs were able to create a kind of new combat system that was fun and really fluid, making you feel like a total badass, while also creating a new kind of stealth that made you the predator instead of the prey. I mean, you really have to think about how innovative Arkham Asylum actually is. It can't be understated, truthfully, how innovative it was when it first came out. Even now, it's been so thoroughly copied, but you go back to it and it's really, really entertaining. Right from the start, it's a non-stop roller coaster ride through the asylum where you're fighting enemies, solving Riddler puzzles, sneaking around, and doing much more. That's what makes this game so freaking great. You're constantly getting new stuff that mixes everything up, and you stay on your toes the whole time. It's one of the best designed, most fun 10-hour games there is. Period. I have a few bonuses for you, too. First, Metro 2033, which is 9 hours, and Metro Last Light, which is 9.5. Single-player first-person shooters, kind of a dying breed. You either get huge open-world ones like Far Cry or short little 4-hour campaigns tacked onto a multiplayer game like Call of Duty. The third Metro dipped its shoes in the open world. It's much longer because of it, but the first two are really tightly paced linear narrative shooters. They're set in a place you wouldn't think would work, work, but it does. And they do such a great job focusing on atmosphere. If you had to pick one of the two, I'd maybe say Last Light. Definitely fantastic stuff. Next is Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, a spiritual successor to Jet Set Radio. And in all seriousness, this game does a great job following up Jet Set Radio by adding things in a tasteful manner, like how it handles combat, which they also smartly make you use immediately so you even realize it's there. It's probably the weakest part of it, honestly, but it's also nice to actually be able to defend yourself in what feels like Jet Set Radio. And it certainly doesn't get in the way of everything that this game really excels at. I mean, it really feels like Jet Set Radio, which is a game that excelled at grinding around these weird, kind of sci-fi, futuristic, ultra-Japanese looking environments. And finally, Kana Bridge of Spirits, a kinder, gentler Souls-like. Not that long, but there's some good movie-quality cutscenes and surprisingly challenging combat. The exploration and story also highlights, it's just a very good Souls-adjacent game that you probably wouldn't guess is a Souls-adjacent game from looking at it, and it's also not excruciatingly long. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at FalconTheHero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.